All right, well, it looks like pretty much everybody is in now. We're going to kick off this webinar. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Karen Wills. I'm SVP of Marketing and Investor Relations here at Strategicon with we have an illustrious panel here, which I will get to in just a moment. But first, we're going to go through a few housekeeping items. You'll see a question tab on your GoToMeeting panel. And so I would request that any questions that you have for the panel, just enter them in there. I will be monitoring it throughout the course of the webinar. And we'll be sending the questions to our panelists. So you will get, and if we run out of time, we will answer them post the webinar, but we'll answer as many questions as we can during the webinar. So the other few things is don't take a look at the resources that we've added in for you. There's a couple of case studies that I think you will find extremely interesting, and a blog on this particular topic. And I just also wanted to give you a heads up on a couple other events that Strategicon is going to be at or sponsoring. We'll actually be at COG Nordic in Malmo, Sweden, April 1st and 2nd, and we will be at OCTEU in Barcelona, I believe it's Barcelona, April 29th and 30th. So hopefully we might see some of you guys there. Please, please, please stop by the booth and say hello. And I also wanted to just give you a heads up to keep an eye out, and you can find it certainly on our website and on Anka's LinkedIn and on the Clinical Maestro LinkedIn. We have another webinar coming up pretty much on the heels of this one, which is going to be on April 7th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We don't typically do webinars this close together. However, we have a stellar panel. Is that if I said rock star, then you'd know I'm from the Boston area. So, or wicked good panel. There we go for Boston. For this webinar, it's going to be, the topic of discussion is going to be clinical outsourcing transformation in the Asia Pacific perspective. We have Brenda Medina of Kyowa Kirin will be hosting it. Cassandra Murphy of Shinogi, Jen Trevor of Astellas, Mickael Rabilloud, who is one of our missing panelists today, but I'll let Anka go into that. Brian Sigley of PwC, Ratan Ranesh of Taiho Oncology, and our own Anka Kopescu will also be there. So please check out that link. If you need more information, please don't hesitate to email me or anybody on the Strategicon team. We'd be happy to send you links for that. And with that, I am going to introduce the CEO and founder of Strategicon, Anka Kopescu, who's actually the visionary and the power behind Strategicon and Clinical Maestro, which Strategicon is the company behind Clinical Maestro and Vision. She has over 20 years in clinical operations and outsourcing and has dedicated her life, and apparently ours as well, to transforming clinical business operations with technology that bridges efficiency gaps. And her vision for Clinical Maestro and Vision arose from her commitment to solving the complexities and inefficiencies that life science organizations face in clinical trial budgeting, sourcing, and vendor management. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Anka, and I'll let you introduce the rest of the panel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. Glad to be back here for another, I hope, fantastic webinar. We have 3 panelists and one is on the way. So hopefully by the time we start, you're going to see his face. I'm going to introduce you the 2 panelists present, starting with you, dear Kara.
Hi, glad to be here today, guys. Thank you, Anka, Karen, for inviting me to join the panel and share my thoughts. My name is Kara Titus. I'm a Senior Director of Procurement at Dragonfly Therapeutics. I've been in the industry for just over 20 years now, and in the vendor management, strategic sourcing space for the last 15, specializing in clinical and R&D. Sat at a variety of companies, both large like Sanofi as well as small like Dragonfly, Sage, and then also CGen. So really, I would say I love talking about and understanding more about how we can help bridge and build those relationships with our external providers that our business depends on to deliver our clinical trials, and really thinking about how do we set up the contracts to support the business and make sure that our vendors and us are working in a collaborative relationship that gives that one team approach. So thank you, Anka. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Kara. And I'm going to let Mickael take a deep breath and go to Andre next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anka. I'm Andre. I'm the head of product at Strategicon. So I'm leading the product discovery and product development efforts at the company. I've actually been with the company from the early stage and have been involved in most of the product launches on the platform. I come from a product and design background with a computer science degree and an experience of around 13 years, I think, in both corporate and startup environments. Strategicon was actually my first foray into the life sciences industry, which I think has been an advantage to me because I can see things with a fresh pair of eyes. So excited about this discussion and this panel today. And over to you, Anka.
Okay, well, in fact, over to you, Mickael. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. So I am Mickael Rabilloud. So I have been working most of my career in the procurement organization, supporting different category, but I would say 80% of my career focus was R&D. I've been working in very large pharma, such as Sanofi, Merck, as well as medium pharma, Astellas, and lately within a biotech called Ionis. So I've been a fervent supporter of Strategicon and Clinical Maestro really from the beginning since 2018. I really did see an opportunity for a lot of pharmaceutical company to take the leap and start to bring real technology within procurement. And when I say real technology, it's really a specialized technology to support the largest budgets that we have within our organization, clinical trials. And I believe it was really the first solution that where I've seen a huge potential. And as we go in this era of AI, there are even more opportunities. So all that being super positive, there are really through my career, I've seen a lot of leaders, CFOs, CPOs that have difficulty to understand the value of such a technology to support clinical trials. So that's why I welcome this kind of webinars where we can all be around the table and share our views, but as well hear about, from Andre, Karen, and Anka, the capabilities of such a technology. I hope that moving forward, pharmaceutical and clinical operation, finance, and as well as procurement will be more open to test these kind of technologies and to see firsthand the value that it can bring, because I can see and I can definitely attest that from a forecasting, from a saving perspective, from a vendor management perspective, and much more now with what you're going to see. So sorry, it was a bit long, but I just wanted, to introduce myself properly and share also my views about this technology. So thank you, Anka, thank you, Andre and Karen for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mickael. Unexpected introduction, actually, for all accounts. So today we will focus on vendor management to get you started. And I know we have a large audience today, so I'm thrilled about this. I'd like to get a bit of a temperature check through a mini survey. And Karen, if you can pull up the survey, we have 2 quick questions, and then we'll dive into the discussion. You'll see a very high level, what we call a helicopter demo of our vendor management application, our latest release, which came in March. And then we'll continue the discussion. On to you, Karen.
All right, thanks, Anka. The poll is actually launched. So in order for the panel to best address your questions and your issues, we have a question up there that's, what are your biggest pain points in vendor management? So, I'm just encouraging everybody to vote now. Just pick one. Is it because you have no central hub? Is it because it's manual or slow? You don't have any analytics? Or is it reactive versus proactive? So it's pretty interesting. I don't think the panel, I think I can see the polls because I'm running it, but I don't think the panel can see them yet.
I'm seeing it, and it's actually fascinating.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. It's fun to watch them. They're kind of switching back and forth here as people are voting. So we'll just give them a few seconds to vote.
And by the way, I put a question on LinkedIn, a mini poll, and the question was, who's doing more vendor management, the sponsor and the CRO, or the CRO? And it came 60-40. So I do want to highlight the fact that the topics of today are really not only a sponsor biopharma centric, because especially in full outsourcing model, but not only, your partners, the CROs, are doing a ton of vendor management on the sponsor behalf. And oftentimes this is underlooked. Actually, as we were looking at the registrants, we were seeing primarily pharma, and I wished we had more CRO voices, but maybe at the next webinar. Okay, shall we call the results?
Sure.
Close the voting. Okay,
Yeah,
I need to put glasses now.
All right. So we're going to end and share the results. So.
Okay. No central hub takes the prize with minimal focus on ongoing performance. That's very interesting. Kara, on to you from a small or a small to mid biotech perspective. When you are looking at this, what are you thinking?
Yeah, not shocking, right? I think that's the biggest thing coming through, is that when I think about the disparate information sources and the ability of the teams to really understand the trends, right, and versus reacting to in the moment feedback or in the moment situations, right? And I think as we think about how do we build the relationships with our vendors, how do we build that trust, I think what's most important is that we're providing consolidated, meaningful feedback in the moment. And so a tool like Clinical Maestro Vision really enables you to do that, right? Like, I think it gives that central repository and hub, so we're not living in 10 different Excel spreadsheets and trackers at the study level, right? But we're rolling this up into a consolidated fashion in one system that, based on what you determine, that the enterprise can have access to. And I think that's so important because it allows us to really spot the trends and communicate those to our partners in a way that's actionable. And I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is we give feedback of, this PM is not being responsive, or, the study is delayed. But by tracking and trending, we're able to communicate in a way that's, more systemic, and it enables the vendors to take action and identify those challenges. So I think for me, that's probably the most striking point, Anka, as I look at the results.
Okay, Mickael, what do you think? Put the larger company hat, where there's so many places to find information. Are you surprised by the results?
No, I'm not surprised. I do think that there is a problem of ownership of data as well, so it's and different function, like they have like a different focus, I would say. And the lack of centralization and one source of truth kind of undermine a bit the value of vendor management. I've seen vendor management being done in quality, in QA. I've been seen in procurement, as well as clinical operation and vendor management sitting within development. So as you can see, we started to see different repository being built, and I relay with Kara. A lot of these activities are done on the moment, often with lack of perspective and actual strategy built with vendors. So something that I like to see more is supplier development, supplier performance, and more long-term strategic vision, how we want to work with these vendors. And I do believe that having consistency in the way we manage the vendor and one source of truth will enable this ability to be much more strategic with our vendors supporting our clinical trials.
Absolutely. Andre, you've been working with quite a large panel of industry experts on the requirements for this release and previous releases. What do you think, looking at the numbers? Is it consistent?
I think it's consistent with what we've experienced. In principle, on the central hub, I've usually seen that people doing vendor management, usually, even if the information that they're looking for exists somewhere, they don't have access to that system. Maybe it's like a QA system, so they need to request a report, and then you end up with like a million reports on a SharePoint. And on the reactive side, this is actually something we are exploring using AI for incorporation in the short to medium term, based on the documents and the information at the vendor level for governance and so on. So I can't say I'm surprised about these.
Okay, I'll just comment a tiny bit here by saying the lack of central hub is something that I experienced. The pain of the Excel tracker, which I know makes everyone smile. And we actually have a thought leadership community called Pharma Sourcing Circle. And I just posted a video called "Why Do I Hate the Vendor Tracker?" So if you want to log in, you'll hear me tell you all the stories around it. But it comes down to having central information. And I will focus a lot of today's demo actually on the lack of central hub. I am surprised, though, that the CRO control governance meetings and content gets only 4%. Maybe because we don't have a lot of CROs in the audience, that could be a reason. But my experience is that in most governance meetings, the CRO is preparing the governance deck. They put together the metrics, they put together the deck, they are doing the presentation. It ends up being a PowerPoint in PDF that stays there until the next quarter or until the next meeting, completely static. Nobody goes to, and I feel the CROs are driving a lot of it. It's also a lot of effort in that exercise. We have one more quick survey, and then we'll go to the demo. Karen, on to you. This one is simpler.
All right. Yeah, no, I was just checking to make sure my microphone was on. Sure. This is actually you only have 3 options here in terms of how do you currently track performance at the service category level. So do you use Excel? Do you have a dedicated commercial vendor management system, or do you have a generic or homegrown vendor management system? So we'll give it a few seconds, about a minute or so, to see how many people can vote. So get your votes in there.
Yeah, and while we do that, I'll tell you about the blog which you attached, Karen, that I wrote. It's called "Finding the Needle in the Haystack." It emerged from an interview with quite a well-known vendor management person in the pharma industry, who, by his own words, expressed a frustration of not being able to find the scope of work for, let's say, a top-tier CRO across all businesses. So the CRO had multiple categories, had multiple services, worked across multiple departments, had all sorts of scopes of work which were centralized in a contracting system, but not necessarily at the vendor and category management level. And that's how he defined it. I couldn't find the needle in the haystack. But I think looking at the results, we know why. Because the needle is in the Excel tracker, looks like.
All right, come on, guys. More of you voted last time. We'll give you a couple more seconds here to get your vote in.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. We don't know who you are. we don't know who's voting. All right, we're going to end the poll, and we'll toss it back to you, Anka, to.
Can you put the poll back? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm going to go to you, Mickael, first, and ask you a question. Why are the generic homegrown vendor management systems not being used? I mean, big pharma can afford them, but we know this is a small audience sample. But why aren't these solutions getting the job done and people revert to Excel?
Well, I do think that, as we said a bit previously, people are in the moment, lack of strategy, and as well, maybe in certain area, certain company, lack of capability or lack of resources. So there is a prioritization, on the bottom line often, and misunderstanding of the entire supply chain value, and as well priorities that could be different. So in the end, there is systems that are basic, put in place to track the day-to-day, but and the bottom line mostly, and the mostly tactical. So I do think that supplier relationship management and vendor management had opportunity the way we operate had the opportunity to use systems that are obviously could be more effective, and I believe that Clinical Maestro has such a technology that at least to support clinical category, can and will show value if implemented properly.
No, thank you, Mickael. Thank you. I'm flattered. Kara, why aren't you using any? I know we've worked together at Sage, and why weren't you using some generic solution for vendor management? There are a ton out there.
Yeah, I think I've actually, given the organizations I've worked at, I've had the opportunity to work in all three of these types of methods, right? And I think there's pros and cons to each. I think the biggest thing is a commercial system, like the homegrown systems are often nice because you can curtail it to your needs. I think as a growing biotech, right? Like a lot of times those standards aren't known or developed. And so having an advantage of a system that you can plug and play is kind of nice because you can, get up to speed and get things implemented rather quickly. And then that can scale and grow with you as you grow, right? So sometimes when you build these CRM systems or CRM-based systems, there's limited functionality. It doesn't always give the ability to push and pull with different, legal databases or ERPs and, different systems and trackers and SharePoint. So, the functionality of the commercial system really pulls in all those capabilities, and it gives that centralized space that an Excel tracker or something like that doesn't give. So I think it gives that ability to kind of cover all aspects and be inclusive and thoughtful about all the various pieces that pull together as you're building out your standards and your processes and the ways of working as an organization. And so it kind of gives you that foresight and the ability to put something in place really quickly with low effort. I think these biotech teams are often stretched so thin. And so the idea of adding in like the input and the testing and things like that have to go with the homegrown system or the Excel trackers is sometimes a difficult ask. And they really need to be able to focus on their studies. So I think something like Clinical Maestro gives that optionality, but also flexibility.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let's get to it. What I'd like to do is give you a very high-level overview. We will have a series of webinars on vision, so we can only take one point at a time. Without knowing the results, I summarize the pain points into too much and too little. But I think we all touched on this to some extent, and to what you commented, Mickael, there are too many systems, but they don't talk to each other, or they do different things, or licenses are limited and the information doesn't flow, or they are too generic to match the needs of the study teams, who in fact we are finding are some of the major operators in vision are not necessarily vendor managers, are the cleanups people who go in and search for vendors and who's available on what study and what's the scope of work. And we know there are way too many cooks in the vendor management kitchen, right? You have every possible stakeholder in the company working on a study is one way or another touching a vendor. And they may or may not have systems. And Mickael, you called QA. QA is, and QMS systems are fantastic for what they are, but they're not good for broad category management, strategy, performance management. So you end up with systems that box you in certain areas, and that's not healthy for having a strategic view of your vendor portfolio. And that's why we go back to the Excel tracker, because it's so easy to put together, right? But it takes a lot of effort to maintain it and read through the comments and the colored cells. And, we all know what this means. And because we work so much in Excel to bridge a gap, that limits our analytics. And by having few analytics, we can make smart decisions, right? It's a lot of exposure, and pharma doesn't do $5,000 contracts. We all know we are talking about millions and millions of investment on each clinical trial. So that exposure brings a lot of volatility and hinders decision making. And it comes down to regulatory requirement on oversight. So all of these pieces are related. We live and breathe them. And we're making a concerted effort to bring these pain points into our solution. So let's talk a second about vision on the next slide. And let's see a mini demo. And for today, we'll only focus on the central hub. As I mentioned, we'll have webinars for pretty much every box you're seeing here on the screen. So vision is truly the only end-to-end vendor performance management which is built for purpose for pharma. It started with category management. It actually started with that interview that led to the blog, Finding a Needle in the Haystack, of helping companies truly understand different nuances at the vendor level. It could be a small vendor that impacts an endpoint. So dollars are not necessarily the most important or driving a tier. Understanding and easily finding, and I mean easily, within minutes, without logging 10 different systems, what's the status of that vendor? And is it active? Is it inactive? What's the scope of work? What's the performance? That's part of that key central hub. And that's putting what I think it's bringing category management forward for all companies. I know, Kara, small biotechs don't think about category management. What is that? But the point is, as you grow and many companies grow, that becomes really important. So setting the foundation well, it's super critical. As we move on from clockwise, risk scoring and performance management is a big area of focus for us, and we'll have an event probably in July around risk assessment. And at the bottom, it's primarily focusing on the capabilities, either capabilities of a new vendor and the categorization from the get-go, or oftentimes we transition the Excel tracker into vision. And that's an opportunity to rethink the process and actually put the category strategy in place, which is mission critical, as you mentioned, Mickael. But also, quote unquote, herding the cats when it comes to evaluations. And I know, again, we don't have a lot of CROs, but even we are subjected to 5, 6, 7 surveys every time an RFP comes out, and they all come in Excel and they are hard to answer. And we all know the pains of being evaluated as a vendor, but also as a sponsor, being the reviewer of evaluation that come in Word, Excel, SurveyMonkey, other unfit solutions. And it ties to the pain point that emerged in the first survey. That's not only new vendor qualification that matters, it is the ongoing performance. So that it comes at the study level, it comes at the financial level, it could be reflected in change orders. We all know it can lead to shutting down the study. So all of these pieces are comprehensive vendor management in our view. And again, today we'll focus on the first box on the category management and the central hub function. So Andre, on to you for the helicopter demo, and Kara and Mickael, please comment and feel free to annoyingly interrupt, or not annoyingly, kindly.
Oh, I love interruptions, please. Let's hear the questions. Okay, so as Anka said, we'll focus just on a helicopter view of vision right now, focused on the idea of a central hub. So I have a demo system here, which again, this first screen you're seeing focuses on that top let's say pain point in the first survey, which is having a central hub for your vendors. We can pull this information from a plethora of data sources into the central hub. So people in vendor management can know who's working on what vendors do they have, what is their status, all focused on usability and searchability on the app. So again, I have a few vendors here, for example, but you can imagine how this can become really valuable if you have a lot of vendors in your portfolio. Focusing a bit on the reporting capabilities, which are shown here, you see we have a number of selected, let's say, most important filters that we found at this level from a category perspective. So what vendors are working on what studies. I can filter by study here. I can see what services the vendor offers, and I can filter by that, or what TA or business unit they are in. These aren't the only ones. We have a larger selection of filters here. And not only this, you can also extend the data model in Vision. So if you want to track something else at a vendor level that we don't have already, you can add it in Vision on your own, and then you'll be able to report on it from here. So we could do, for example, a quick search on what CROs do I have in my my portfolio here, who, let's say, are working in clinical development business unit. So I immediately get a filter on that, and I can export this and choose what I want to include on the report. So again, we just have a simple selection of vendors here, but you can imagine how this becomes powerful when you have a larger portfolio of vendors. So I'm going to stop here and see if Kara or anyone wants to comment on this.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I was going to say, like, I think as you think about like category management and supplier-based rationalization and developing your category strategy, right? Like, I think one of the greatest advantages of something like Clinical Maestro Vision over an Excel spreadsheet tracker is that it gives you the ability to look at what vendors you're working with, especially in like mid-sized to large organizations. What vendors are you working with across the board? And what services are they touching on similarly, right? And like, instead of doing all that data pulling and research as a category manager or procurement person, right? Like, you're able to log into a system and create a dashboard view that really gives you a visual representation of where to start tackling your strategy. So I think that's really nice. Or even as a small organization, we're adding new vendors all the time, right? And so like it gives you the ability to start looking at your tail spend and thinking about like, how can I consolidate this spend to get more commercially advantageous terms? So I think those are just a couple of use cases from my perspective, Andre, on like this view and kind of how we can leverage that data more easily and more time effectively to start informing a category strategy development. Mickael, what do you think?
Same. Same. I don't have anything to add to what you just said.
Okay.
I think what
Looks
I would,
simple enough.
yeah, what I
Yeah,
would comment here and how I would basically compare it to, let's say, because I think there was a comment in the first part around the homegrown solutions, the fact that there's an advantage then that they are basically customizable, all right? So, you know, you spend some time doing them, but you can basically make them as you need them. We took this in consideration when building vision, so that's why all of the data fields and, for example, the categories that you basically, oops, I removed the filter. All of the categories that you select at a vendor level, the services provider, and virtually all of the elements in the data model are configurable to a specific organization. So we kept the flexibility in mind when designing vision. Sorry, Anka, cut you off.
No, I was going to say, I'm looking at the time. Let's peel the onion again and take a look at, for example, contract search, which is something that primarily CleanOps is using. And it's different than going into a contract management system, and you'll see in a second why, because it's designed for vendor management. It's also interconnected with our sourcing application. So once the RFP is completed in source, it automatically flows into this type of view. But let you comment on this, Andre.
Yeah, so like the difference from the first view, and these are all aggregated portfolio views. The difference is that here there's a relationship vendor to vendor study to the amount of work or the volume of work. So and I have a touch point on third-party vendors and subcontractors, because usually what we've seen happening is when a full outsourcing model is used, you end up with lack of transparency on subcontractors or third-party costs. So not only in Vision can you capture that, but those can actually be, you see they're basically hyperlinks, they're actually profiles in vendors. So you have full overview over the main CRO or vendor at the study level and the subcontractors involved in that, which also have their profile and are included in the Vision data model. So here again, I can easily see what contracts do I have with Synolex, for example, which is our fictive vendor here, and I can also filter again what contracts do I have with them on a particular study or with a particular business unit. So again, the same concepts apply here in terms of being able to extend this data model, being able to track and trend different information at the contract level. And I would just open up an example here, work order, where in Vision we keep high-level information about exactly what services were captured, what was their amount, and again, any subcontractors which were involved and their profile from Vision. So again, all for having easy access to this information. Now, if you also use Source, the sourcing system from Clinical Maestro, all of this information will be auto-populated in Vision once you have completed an RFP or a sourcing event there. There, of course, it's much more detailed for support and procurement due diligence. So I'm going to pause, see if the panel here wants to add anything.
I'll make a quick comment, because on the requirements, as we were building Vision, we wanted to answer several questions. So the first filter, we wanted to know, what does this vendor do? Let's say, what category, what services, who's working with them. In this case, we are trying to figure out on which specific study and what is the breakdown of the services. So that's different from, again, a contract management system, because it's looking at who's provider, direct and indirect provider, which ties to the clinical sourcing model. But we also want to answer the question, who are our providers in clinical data management, which is a different type of filter. So if you ask that question broadly, who are we working in clinical data management across all our studies, including historical studies, then you can say, hey, maybe it was Cinylex, Immersus, whatever names are. So you can get a deeper answer. What are your vendors on the study? What is the vendor working on across all the service categories? And who are the vendors on a specific service category? So again, it's trying to go find the needle in the haystack into an interface that's very simple and intuitive, but behind it, there's a lot of data. So going back to this, Kara, would that replace the Excel tracker?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's an upgrade, right? Because right now, like for a small biotech, I think there's a tendency to leverage your CROs as your third-party sourcers, right? For things like IRT, EDC, different aspects like that. And so a lot of times that level of detail is buried in the proposals that you receive during RFP or buried in the contracts as pass-throughs, right? And it's kind of difficult sometimes to really have a firm grip and like retain transparency on what that looks like for those not directly working on the study every day. And so I think the ability to kind of pull it from here in one spot makes it a lot easier and less time consuming for people to hunt and find that information. And then I think with the new ICH E3 E6 R3, right? Like there's this greater level of oversight and accountability on the part of the sponsor. And for small biotechs that are working on POC and phase 1 studies, it's less of a muscle that's inherent, right? And we have to start to build that as we move to phase 2s and phase 3s. And so having that built into this system really helps that natural progression to that greater level of oversight and understanding of what our CROs are doing and knowing how it's delivered. So I think it gives you an advantage over the Excel trackers and even the CRM systems today.
Thank you. Mickael, any thoughts?
No, but I mean, what I like to see more is supplier due diligence and as well input about supplier information from the market. So that's great to have this data readily available. I just hope that in the future vision of your system, we will be able to integrate InfoSec information and all of this information that are key as we manage vendor on a day-to-day, but as well building strategies with them.
Yeah, and we'll have a webinar on this, and I'm a big supporter of this thinking because it's having a comprehensive scan of the vendor internally, but also externally is mission critical. So we'll have a webinar on risk management, and this is Andre hinted, we are leveraging AI to look through internal documents, for example, notes from governance meetings or oversight plans or let's say project level meetings that detect errors and risks. But to your point, Mickael, going out in the market and adding a layer of, there are only 3 months of runway in the bank, or, financial risk or non-compliance risks, or I don't know, warning letters that might have been issued, and the day-to-day person may not be thinking of that. So definitely, and I'll have you on that panel too when you'll see it. It's probably July timeframe. I would say, given the time, let's maybe, Andre, take a look within a vendor.
Yeah, I'm going to jump
and this
to
will
the
give you some
profile
high-level
here.
information of how a vendor record looks like. Today, again, we focus mostly on the searchability.
Yeah, so again, this is a profile from a vendor. We have an entire onboarding and qualification section, which is probably going to be a webinar on itself. But to put it briefly, the vision is designed to also help with the onboarding part of suppliers and making sure everyone is aligned internally and externally in terms of the steps you need to take at a category level, because steps may be different or may even have issues on a different category. So if we switch to labs here, we see that there are some issues in the supplier onboarding versus on the CRO category. They're all green lighted. And I'll just give a sneak peek of the other information in Vision, and we'll probably section this on separate webinars. So on performance, right now you can track both action items and issues with your supplier. You can track these internally or externally, so involve the vendor as well, because they can also have access to parts of this system if you give them the respective rights and invite them. And in Q4 this year, we're going to focus on the key performance indicators tracking. So it will extend the performance section. We already saw the agreements, and moving to the evaluations and audits. Here is really focused on the onboarding side of things, where you can set up templates for surveying vendors, so you can standardize your onboarding processes and receive survey responses back, to which then you can analyze directly in the system. So we're kind of positioning this on all of the, let's say, steps that you would have with a supplier, starting with onboarding them and evaluating them up to ongoing governance, where you can track your meeting minutes, governance documents, and everything in the governance section, which I think is one of the most used parts of Vision right now, which is tying into the proactive risk identification that both Anka and Mickael hinted to. So this is sort of a bird's eye view of the elements in Vision, and I think we'll continue to have like focused discussion on each of the sections.
Okay.
So,
well,
over to you, Anka. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say, because I do want to answer some questions. We have one more survey. If Karen, if you can help us out.
Sure, let me just pull this up here. Best use cases for artificial intelligence?
Yes.
Oh, good, I got the right one. This is good. I'm on a roll. So everybody should be seeing the survey now. What are the best use cases for AI and vendor management? So let's get you guys voting, and in terms of risk performance, deviation tracking, new vendor onboarding. I know it takes you guys a little bit to read all the answers, ongoing capability evaluations, and just straight up everything. Soon everything's going to be done with AI. So we'll give you a little bit of time to do your voting. I mean, we're just obviously in this world, we're seeing AI penetrate everything. I know there's so many cases in running marketing here that we're switching to AI. it's faster, and it's pretty. I mean, you got to check it, but it's pretty accurate. So
yeah. It's I will be speaking at 2 conferences about our use cases in AI and showcasing our features. They are particularly focused. The next 2 conferences, the OCT Nordics next week in Malmo, and it's COGS conference in Malmo.
Yes.
In Malmo, and the OCT Europe in Barcelona. We're going to showcase the Maestro bot. and our mapping technology using AI. And in July, we will have August timeframe, we are going to showcase the risk management features that we just spoke about in Vision.
All right. So I think
76% voted. Okay.
Yep. Here we go. Let's share the results here.
Okay. Thoughts? Kara, calling on you.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's interesting because what I've seen and what I've used AI the most for is more volume, right? Like supporting volume and kind of efficiencies. And so I think some of the results are a little different than where I would have originally thought the answers would be. Like I actually thought new vendor onboarding was going to be the slam dunk, and it's actually the lowest one. So that's pretty low from what I expected. But I think it's interesting because it's reflective of the evolution we're seeing in AI in the marketplace, right? Where we're starting to develop it a little more robustly and able to kind of take on complex tasks, right? And I think what's really nice about AI is it allows individuals like myself and Mickael to think about like more strategic parts of the process of what we're doing. Like how are we engaging with the business? How are we building those relationships? And kind of leaning into that a little more closely. So it's kind of taking a lot of these tasks that we had to spend a lot of time on and pulling from disparate sources and making sure we're plugging in with the right people to pull the information, and managing that in an automated way. So that way it enables us to kind of reach out more broadly and sophisticate it with our partners and develop some, how are we solving for tomorrow? So those are some thoughts.
Yeah, and really to complement you, Kara, I do think AI is a fantastic tool for decision making. For to help, to confirm strategies and bring and accelerate the way we do our day to day. So AI, I don't see AI replacing everything. It's just going to help us, to work more strategically and faster and better. So we are just going to be human enhanced because in the end, I think robots are in front of us, but we're still not there. And at that point, we're really looking for a system that can help us to make best decision and secure our clinical trial success, but as well optimize our P&L.
Absolutely, and these results don't surprise me, and actually it's a confirmation of the direction we are taking, because our focus is primarily on risk performance and deviation tracking, leveraging AI, and as I said, we are doing this by being able to scan much faster than a human can through either governance documents, meeting minutes, scopes of work to detect risk and bring it forward. So it's about being proactive so we can focus on the strategy. Now, if we layer that on the external market information on top of that, it's even more beneficial, to your point, Mickael. But it's really trying to answer the question, how is that vendor performing and where are the risks? And sometimes the risks are at the study team, they're in emails, they are in different places, and it's hard to pull them together. And it comes to the pain point of not enough oversight and not being proactive enough. I think the new vendor onboarding, ongoing capability evaluations are low-hanging fruits, because we should be able to pre-score, to evaluate new vendors significantly easier than what we are doing today through the horrific surveys that we are subjected to and the industry is subjected to. And I agree with both of you that AI is going to be just another superhuman working next to you, not replacing you. So that's very important. I don't think we have more time because I'd like to take some questions. We had the next survey was very simple. But I don't know, Karen, do we still have time, or do we want to take some
Well,
questions?
let's go through a bunch of questions right now, or get through some of them, and I can put the poll up at the same time
Yes,
while you're answering
yes,
a question. So
yes,
first
let's do
question
that.
here, can you compare vendor to vendor within a category based on a multitude of attributes?
Absolutely, that's the whole goal. So it's
Yeah,
vendor to
including
vendor.
they're saying performance, quality, spend,
Yeah,
that type of thing.
yeah. So you can choose the filters that you want to compare on, and comparability. We didn't show much today. It's mission critical because it goes back to getting insights from your historical record as well. So you can compare vendor A with vendor B, but it's interesting to compare vendor A over time, and see if things have changed. And let's be honest about the way mid to large pharma work. They work with a handful of providers, and managing that preferred relationship beyond a beautiful oversight plan of 50 pages, it's mission critical. So that the whole point. And as we are evolving, looking at risks, we are focused on comparing vendor A with vendor B, but we are a lot focused on vendor A over time, as an example.
Okay.
And Kiara, I know you are nodding because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Agree. Yeah.
So the next question is, can you separate out investigator grants if you like from PTC?
Should I give you this question, Andre? This is mostly for vendor management, but if you treat the site as a vendor, why not? And it should be, right? They are suppliers to clinical research. So depending on how you are setting the configuration, yes. On a more comprehensive answer on how we are treating this in source, I'll give Andre to comment a little bit.
Yeah, well, in source, we actually have like complete configurability over what is basically considered as a third party or as a subcontracted service, and where exactly do the grants show up in the budget. So this can also be used for different visualization or reporting purposes, but most importantly, focusing on getting the data right and then being able to visualize or report it in different ways. So probably for a more sourcing due diligence webinar topic for that.
Yes, which we are planning to do that in the fall, right, Andre? We don't have the whole calendar planned out, but we'll have something very specific on that ties vision and source together, so procurement and vendor management.
Oh. Okay,
I think we have time. One more question.
Yep, I'm going to launch the last poll. So,
Okay.
are you currently using AI in vendor management? So we're going to get this last information from you before we go. And while you guys are voting, I'm going to throw out the last question to the panel. The question is, what AI tools are being used, or is Maestro going to be able to support with AI? For example, to evaluate the capabilities of existing vendors, as well as to be able to do that, as well as other AI vendors / tools. He said not really a vision specific question, but just kind of in general.
Yes. I cannot answer for other solutions simply because I do not know. I will tell you that we are investing heavily in bringing the capabilities we discussed about such as onboarding, maintenance, risk detection, pre-scoring, evaluations into the solution. We're actually going to have our first AI release at the end of May. And we'll have a scheduled webinar so you can see what the AI muscle can do to vendor management. I'm not aware of other solutions, and you can see the answer is primarily no. And I asked that question at the Scope conference, and I said, hey, if you are using AI for sourcing, that was a question, raise your hand, and nobody did. So we all know there is a lot of discussion. I think we are ahead of the game in many ways. But I think we're going to ask this question again a year from now on, and you're going to see different results for sure.
Well, Anka, I did see, just to add, I did see solutions, that are leveraging now intensively AI, especially around risk performance and risk management. So that's, I think, an area where companies are using it. I do believe that we're all to a certain point using AI. Such as ChatGTP, just for research and confirm some of our knowledge. So we are really at the beginning. Now, how do we bring all of this together? I think that's the secret sauce, Anka, and the team that you are trying to bring to us, and we cannot wait.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. I don't know if there are any final thoughts. To me, it was a pleasure to host this webinar. 1 hour is always like this, goes way too quickly. Stay tuned for more events coming from us, and join forces in the transformation of clinical outsourcing and vendor management.
Excellent. No, thank you. Thank you so much. And don't forget to keep an eye out for our really stellar panel that's going to be showing up on April 7th in terms of clinical outsourcing transformation. And Anka, I think the next time we ask this question is, are you interested in using AI in vendor management? Because clearly nobody is, except our one person. So I would like to thank the panel for all their contributions, and for the audience for sticking in there with us. And hopefully everybody learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.